There we go. All right. So yeah, as mentioned before, I'm Jay. I'm a senior cloud advocate at Microsoft. My job is to kind of reach out to the Python community and talk a lot about some of the things that Microsoft is doing in terms of our open source projects. Obviously, I said cloud, so there is that whole like cloud and AI contingency that's there. We're not talking about any of that today. So even though I do Microsoft things, I also do Python things. I'm the creator of an organization called Black Python Devs, which is designed to increase awareness for awareness, networking, resources, skilling, all those fun buzzwords for Black Python developers globally. Currently, we started back in, we started in May at PyCon US 2023. We currently have close to 250 members worldwide. So, and we've already started to see some of the things that we've talked about doing. We've seen that actually come to fruition with some of the elections that happened in Django and other things. So I'm here to talk about Python things, not necessarily Microsoft things, although this is a Microsoft thing. And this thing is actually a thing that I've been working on for a long time. This is like our gold standard demo. In fact, there were like 7 versions of this demo. And we needed to fix that. We needed to basically create one and to have one really solid one. And before the meetup, we were talking about why. And the biggest answer was because if everybody was working on their own separate version of this, then there was zero consistency of what was happening. So as this video is playing on the screen, basically this is just a really simple website. It's got a bunch of buttons. The buttons go to pages. The pages go to database entries. Those database entries link out to other entries in said database. This is a Flask website running Postgres and deployed on Azure Flexible or Postgres Flexible and Azure App Service. Again, none of that is important. All you need to know for this setup was I had to build this site and I needed to figure out how to test it. Now, this is just one variation of this site. I said there were a bunch of these running around. Well, we want to control all of those. We have one repo that builds 17 different variations of this website. They all look the same. On the backends, they're running Django, Fast API, Flask. Some are running MongoDB. Some are deployed via containers. Hopefully, we're going to get Kubernetes into the mix soon. So we had to be able to create tests across all of those different complexities to ensure that our demos loaded exactly the same. So I'm the tech lead for this project. It's called Cookie Cutter Relic Cloud. It is an open source project. It's MIT licensed, so feel free to fork away, and it actually lives on my repo. And there's a link to it in the chat already. And also, just so you know, I can't see the screen. I can see my screen, but I can't see what chat is talking about. So save questions when I go into demos. We'll get there. So what we basically did was this concept called end-to-end testing. End-to-end testing is, in this case, what we mean is like front end to back end. We want to make sure that access to the database works as expected. We want to make sure that users are interacting with the website as we would expect them to. We want to make sure all of our routes are we're able to reach out to them. So we basically needed a front end way to test the front and back end of our site. And obviously, being Microsoft, we have our own biases, but we also believe that the best way to do this is with a tool called Playwright. Also, I do want to put in, we will talk about each of these points in this presentation. So accessibility being one of those things, that was something that I became really excited about recently. So what is Playwright? It's a end-to-end testing platform. It's similar to tools like Selenium, Cypress, Puppeteer. It is all done locally on your machine. So at the end of the day, you're doing all of this stuff, you're building all your commands out, and you're deploying. But this also means that you can take it and put it wherever you need it to, including GitHub Actions. So the way that we test is we have local tests that run both unit tests and these end-to-end tests with Playwright. But then also we have those exact same tests testing not just locally, but also our deployed projects using GitHub Actions. And feel free to screenshot away in terms of QR codes and stuff. And those are the links that go to that. So how do we get started with Playwright? I want you to remember 3 things. I want you to remember go to, get by, and expect. So we go to the page, we get by the asset, and we expect against it. We go to our home page, we get by the role, which is a link, and we expect that when we click it, the next page that we go to is the next page. And then we repeat that process again and again and again and again and again. But before we have to do any of that, we install. And the way that you install is quite simple. You do pip install PyTest Playwright because, of course, we integrated with PyTest. You can just pip install Playwright. Pip install PyTest Playwright does install pip install Playwright, and there is an API, and it is built in Python. We also have one for Node and .NET and Java. Yeah, there's one in Java. After that, you're going to want to install your dependencies. There's 2 ways you can go about this. Playwright allows you to test multiple resolutions at multiple browser types. So you can install WebKit, you can install Firefox, you can install Chrome, and you can also install Chromium for Chromium-based. Chromium is the default test endpoint. So if you don't tell it what browser you want to test against, it will just test against Chromium. If you do Playwright install -- with deps, as it says on the screen here, it will install the dependencies that it needs for all of the browsers, which takes some time. Or you can just do Playwright install Chromium -- with deps, much faster, but it only gives you the Chromium stuff. For us, that was enough. So this is where we're going to jump into our first demo. There are several ways that you can create tests. To me, the best way to do it is by doing code gen. So I'm actually going to go out of here. I'm going to tab over into the Meet just to make sure there aren't any questions for me. I don't see any questions, so that's great. We're going to open up Warp. The reason we're opening up Warp here is because I need to do a few things. The first thing I need to do is I need to go into my dev container to make sure that I can actually, first thing we're going to do is open OrbStack, which opens up Docker. That part's important. Then we're going to open the container. So while that's running, I just need to make sure that the site is running. And I'm just going to test things locally, which is why I'm in a container, because I need Postgres installed and all the other bits there. While that's doing that, I could walk through the steps of here. If we want to do that, let's see if Playwright's installed. Nope. Source, yep. Then activate. I'm in, let's see. Come on. Apparently, my browser decided it does not want to cooperate with me. Cool. All right. Well, we will hope that it doesn't crash and then open another one. All right. Ooh. Can people still hear me? Because
I can.
Yeah, we still hear you. I'm just
Okay.
letting something about work.
yeah, I was starting to beach ball, so I was wondering if there was an issue here. Okay. So I just want to make sure which Python node am I using. Yeah. Why am I not getting output? Okay. Yeah. Python HM. Let's see. VNV. Do the thing. Install it quickly. Cool. Looks like we're ready back here. We're going to run this Flask app like we would, well, like we do, which we do Python -m Flask --app. Flask app is what we call it. Missing command. What command is missing? That's not the right, that's not the command. It would seem that something is not right in the workspace. Okay, that's good. Oh, yep. Got to do that. There we go. We did it. And I can drag this over to prove. There, we have localhost 8000. We have a connection. There is a database there. The database is talking to things. This is good. This is important. We need this. We're going to Python pip install Playwright or PyTest Playwright. That's going to do its thing. And then after that, we're going to do our Playwright install dash, nope. Chromium dash dash with deps. Okay, that's done. And then we're going to do what I mentioned before, Playwright code gen. Now, what this does is this actually loads up a Chromium window and a Playwright inspector. And it's important that everyone can see these. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to see. Okay, I can make this bigger. Awesome. So as you can see, we have some boilerplate here for a PyTest library already. If we switch the target to PyTest, we actually get a little bit better. We get what we would expect. And this is how we write our Playwright tests. This is all local. This is all built into the Playwright interface. If we go into that local host, let's see, localhost 8000. Okay, cool. And we start seeing individual commands being added here. So if I want to go, say, go to destinations, we see that gets added. We scroll in. We want to get by role Earth to see if we have Earth listed here, and we do. Now, let's say we want to actually check for a value. The way that we can do this, we can do a few things. We can say, if I check assert visibility, is this picture visible? As I mentioned before, go to get by something, expect. And you write these out as you read them. Expect page, get by role, it's an image, to be visible. So now we're saying this would be visible. If this fails, it would do a PyTest, failed test, like a failed assertion. And then we can also do the same thing to where we can change up here in this dots area. I know it's a little small there. We can go to the next one, which says assert text. I can click this area and say that this contains Earth. And if I put an exclamation point and I hit OK, it adds that in there. Now, the best part is, unfortunately, I can't necessarily run the test from here, but what I can do is I can copy them, go back into my editor, create a new page, and immediately paste that in. We probably also want to import PyTest. Well, you don't need to import PyTest, but we could ultimately just save that really quick. Let's save this into not there. Let's just save it at the top, and we'll call it Austin. And now inside of another, so here we just do python -m pytest austin.py, and we'll see that it's actually running this test. And if everything is right, then, we get a failure. Unexpected value Earth, which says that the locator resolved to this value. That value was unexpected. I'm guessing it's because of that exclamation point. Yep. Let's take that out, run it again, and now it passes. So this is how we write Playwright tests. And of course, you can go and you can write all these manually. Ultimately, what I would suggest doing is if you need to test a lot of things, you do that. And you just start copy and pasting and then changing the things that you need to change. Now, that's kind of parlor trick number one there. If we go back to this, we go back to our slides. We're then going to go into the next one, which is tracing. And that is seeing what just happened. So I'm just going to go, I'm jumping back and forth in my slides. I don't know how I'm doing on time. I hope I'm doing good to the folks here. So for tracing, we're going to do the exact same thing, except we're going to add a feature here. And we're going to say tracing on. When we turn tracing on, we're still going to get the same test. Well, actually, we're going to get two tests that are exactly the same. And if we list our contents here, there's this new folder called test results that live here. If I want to look at what's inside of test results, I hope that this doesn't have my previous examples in here. Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm inside of a dev container. I can't look at them there. Test results. Here we go. There. You see Austin Pi test example Chromium. I'm actually going to go back into my terminal. And the reason I'm bouncing back and forth is you can't do these interactive commands inside of a dev container because it needs access to the base system to load up the Chromium window and everything on your machine. Doesn't like working inside of a container. But let's close that. We're going to do Playwright, show trace, test results. That's not the test results we're looking for. So we're going to say Austin. We're going to say Austin. This is the wrong folder. This is what happens when you have too many of the exact same project on your computer. Do the thing. Copy. Copy. Thank you. There we go. Okay, try that again. Playwright. Go trace. Test results. Thank you. Not that. Austin. There we go. PyTest example Chromium. And then there's going to be a trace.zip file in here. You add that trace.zip file, that's going to open this trace viewer. The trace viewer gives you the ability to actually scrub through the test as it was happening. So if we full screen this, we can see 600 milliseconds in, we get a website load, we get it doing stuff. If we click on that area, we can actually see, hey, it clicked that button. We can also say, get by roll earth. It'll show you where and when that happened. And the nice thing about this is still a Chromium window, which means we can inspect it. This means we can actually go into this code window and say, I want to see where this is. I want to see what the classes are. I want to see the style of it. I want to see what the link is pointing to. And that gives me the ability to interactively start testing against things. Now, I'm going to speed up because I think I'm running low on time. The next piece of this is really cool. And this is called Axe. I can never remember the name of it. Axe Python Playwright. Axe Python Playwright does accessibility testing. It uses Axe Core, which is built by DQ Labs, which is used to test websites against accessibility violations that are WCAG compliant. So these are things that if you work for a federal site and you have to do these things, it's important that you know about them. That being said, DQ Labs says that this will only find about 57% of accessibility issues. So this doesn't replace having good accessibility practices, having a good accessibility team, and ensuring all these things. But it gets you really, really far down the road. So I'm going to go into my VS Code. I'm going to go into this base.html file. This is just Flask. It's technically Jinja. I have this. Let's see. Let's find an image here. There's an image in here somewhere. I'm trying to find a good one. I think I've got to, oh, here we go. So here's an image of our astronaut bit. It was the raccoon that you see flying around. And as you can see, we have this alt text here. If I comment out this alt text, and then let's reopen that back in the container. Luckily, we don't have to have it rebuild or anything. It should be relatively quick. And we're going to reopen our Flask app. We've just removed an accessibility piece from our code. So now what should happen when I get access to my terminal, while my computer is fighting with me right now, there we go. Python, that looks right. Okay, so now that's running again. If we were to come over and I'm just going to test this. I'm going to test this just inside of VS Code so you can kind of see all the tests. We have unit tests here, and then we have these Playwright tests. These Playwright tests should fail. And the reason they should fail is that here we've added this Axe Playwright sync Playwright import Axe. We have a function here that basically says whatever page you're on, I want you to run Axe on it, check for accessibility errors, and return those errors. And the way that we're doing this is we're taking advantage of Playwright's ability to physically create a window, even though it's headless. It's creating that virtual window behind the scenes. We're injecting the Axe core, it's a JavaScript core. We're injecting that into the browser, into that session, that page, and we're running our test results and we're getting the results and we're checking against them. And that's why we're saying that if the results violation is not 0, log the results and then also raise an error. So we're going to run this. We should see a bunch of failures popping up. We see a bunch of failures popping up. We can probably stop this. That's okay. And now I've tried to be wise, and I've stored these results in a folder called accessibility tests. And they are in here somewhere. Here we go, accessibility tests. And what we should see, found one accessibility violation. These are basically just named after the test, except for that one. That one's a bug. I know the fix for that. I just haven't done it. But we can see, hey, this snippet for this image doesn't have an alt attribute. It doesn't have an ARIA label or an ARIA labeled by. It also tells you the impact level of this. And if I wanted to see more information on it, I could click right there and be given DQ Labs' website that takes me to that apparently just faded into the ether. There we go. Sorry for your retinas. Which has this information. It has a little bit more examples and how it's readable and some of the standards that it violates and some of the success criteria that you need to do on all of that. And the last thing that I will show to wrap up this talk is we've done everything on our local host. So this version of the site is not on our local host. This is being served by a Microsoft Azure. This is the deployed version of the repo that we're seeing. The nice thing about this is we can actually go to the GitHub repo that runs that app service. There we go. And we can see in our actions, we have this deploy state here. And before we deploy, we test. So I can actually go into this test, and this test includes those Playwright tests. It's the exact same test that we ran before. The nice thing is, if we wanted to, we could actually take the output of those tests and feed them into our GitHub Actions output. Now, we don't have that set up for here, mostly because this is a Microsoft-owned sample, and they are picky about how we spend their money. But I've actually done this already on my own personal website, where if I did my job right, I do my accessibility tests. I apparently put in, oh, here we go. Scroll down, and you can actually see my accessibility summary right here. So now whenever I deploy my website anywhere, GitHub Pages, Heroku, AWS, Azure, GCP, wherever, I still get the same benefits of letting Playwright run, having it do these accessibility tests for me, and I can then go into my GitHub Actions, see the report, and see all of the things that I need to work on to make my site more accessible for folks to use. And again, this is testing against the project as it exists in the cloud, as it exists in real life. And the only difference is back in this original Austin test, all I have to do is replace that local host with whatever URL I want. I could do it on meetup.com. Don't do it on meetup.com. You'll be surprised in the errors that you get. But yeah, I could, in theory, do the same thing where I just go to this, I copy that URL, I paste that URL, I go in, I run this test, and I'm pretty sure this test is going to fail because there is an accessibility error that is there. Actually, no, the accessibility error doesn't run on that. So perfect. So there, and the test did fail, but the test failed because I think I stopped the server. Yeah. But that's okay because the first test passed, which is good. And that's the green dot that matters. So to wrap all this up, if you want to get started, I have a couple of QR codes that you can look at to learn more. The biggest one is to go to playwright.dev. The second biggest one is if you want to learn more about the tracer, you can do that. You can go to trace.playwright.dev. Trace.playwright.dev gives you that same tracer functionality, but in the browser. So if you have a trace file, you can go to trace.playwright.dev, drag that trace.zip file onto it, and begin tracing like you were on your local machine, which is great when you don't necessarily have access to all of the tools and stuff that you need. But if you want to learn more about it, those are great places. If you want to find out more about what I'm doing, I am at KJAY Miller everywhere that you can find me, which is mostly just Mastodon. Also kjmiller.com and on LinkedIn. But at this point, if there are any questions, I will be happy to answer them. I can stop sharing my screen as soon as I can find the browser again. There we go. Sweet.
That was awesome. I didn't know about the code gen thing. That's something I've literally could save me hours and days. If you could just, that's something I've always wanted, where it records your screen while you click through things. Never knew.
The code gen it's one of those things that I just found out about it like a month or two ago, and I was like, oh yeah, no, this is gold. Like this is like a big way to begin testing. It helps people become comfortable with writing tests. And I also like the ability for you to kind of read what your tests look like. That's one of the hardest things when writing tests is often, if you're doing Python, sometimes the person testing may not be a Python developer. So it's easier if they can look at the test and it says page go to, and it sees a thing and you're like, oh, I can read that. I don't have to know Python to know that page go to probably means I'm going to a page somewhere, which is, probably the biggest advantage, in my opinion, to Playwright is the syntax. And then again, everything that you're viewing in terms of your trace, in terms of the code gen, all of that is inside of a Chromium window. I know we harp on Electron apps from time to time. The nice thing about it is when you use it to view web stuff, you get access to all the web elements. So that allows you to quickly look up some of the little nitty gritty things that you need to figure out. So maybe that button's the wrong color. What color is it? Well, just inspect it, and then you can actually go and get that color and then figure out what the better contrast ratio would be for it.
Yeah, that one was sick. And then the act sounds really cool. You could just run all your accessibility tests, have that in the pre-commit hook is how I imagine it. And then every time you add a new element, it's just like you can't commit it until you fix up your things.
Yeah, I feel bad because I have hotwired myself, and it's a bad pattern. Don't do what I'm about to say that I do. I have 3 errors that I know about, so I changed the number from 0 to 3. So at least now I know if I introduce a 4th error, like, okay, we're gonna go back and fix those. Once I fix one of those errors, I'll change 3 to 2, 2 to 1, 1 to 0, and then I'll be happy. But don't just be complacent in like knowing what the errors are. Actually fix them as well.
I'll preference this to the other. I'll let Jacob go. Go, Jacob.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna preference this to other people who might be newer to Python and not even, might not be writing tests for their website yet. Without taking away anything, I'll say that you can also use it to write bots. I would never tell you to write anything nefarious, of course, but like I know a lot of people who use these automated tools for bots. Like that's how I started getting into them, and it's fun. Just don't.
So
I don't
there,
know your
there.
thoughts. With
No, that is a very valid use case. Simon Willison actually has a tool where he's basically using Playwright to do the same things that like Beautiful Soup and some other things do, and allow you to actually do some really cool like AI based stuff, AI description based stuff. I don't know enough about it. That's a Simon Willison thing. He's off on another planet with that level of stuff. So I'm kind of leaving that for him.
But I'll just leave that there. If you wanted to play around with this and maybe you have your own website to test, you can make a little bot that goes to another website and you can play around with that. See what happens. See if you get banned from it or not.
You shouldn't get banned. I mean, if you're doing everything through the browser, it's still getting
You
done
have
through the
one
browser.
instance. Don't
Yeah.
have one instance. Right?
Yeah, don't do this nefariously. Don't do bad things with Python,
Don't do
please.
Yeah, that's all. That's what I said.
So you mentioned AI. Your presentation goes and connects to something that Evelyn Ivanov showed, I believe, what was it, March or something like this? What was it? March for this year, like half a year ago. He was showing some AI tool that actually recognizes and finds out things like you asked it, point me on this, the close menu or on the upper left side or all sorts of other things on the screen. So I'm not sure this is something that you're aiming at going, but is it something that's like you might have an interface for an AI to do things for you?
Is there something, I mean, is this something that could use AI to do some of the tools for us?
Okay. I'll have to send you this. Look at this later. For now, answer without looking, but I want an AI interface for this, and I'll send you the links and I can connect you to the guy. So here's one link. Here is actually the code of what he used. Later you can look at it.
Yeah, without diving deep into it, I couldn't say that it would solve that particular AI use case. But yeah, like I mentioned before, a good example of this is if you wanted to create unique alt descriptions for all of the images on a page, you could have it find every single image tag and then feed it into an AI tool and say, hey, describe what you see here. And then use that to build your alt text. Again, not something that I've done, but if I'm thinking of interesting AI use cases with that, I think that would be a very big one.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Okay,
When you
bear
approve or disapprove.
with me here for a second. Like the use case I'm talking about is something that, look, instead of having a human automate and press all sorts of buttons on some web pages, and then the web pages change and something like that, and then you have to do everything from scratch and do the automate thing, like record your clicks and stuff like that. What if you could write text and say, oh, press on the menu button, then go to the right, press on this, press on that, and see that the result happens, and like write it in text. And then Playwright will perform this. Is it something that's not now, but in the future will be possible?
I mean, you could do that now. Just it's not a Playwright endpoint.
Wow.
It would be. I mean, a good example of what we would say to do is to implement the RAG pattern, where you have a bunch of knowledge that you own. I'm going to preface that you own, that you have the rights to use. And you say, hey, this is my corpus. Using all of this knowledge, some AI model that I've trained, I want you to go to this page, go to the input, and ask or fill in the right information. Maybe a good example of this is there were a lot of these robotic, like, I will cancel your, or I'll get your phone bill reduced or whatever. And you can go, here's all my phone bills for the last year with my usage. Can you look at my usage and argue for me for a better rate? That's something. Hey, go to the website, go to the intro, and please ask T-Mobile or Verizon or whoever to lower my bill because I'm not using $100 worth, but you're charging me $100. Like, will it work? I don't know, but is that something you could do? Absolutely. Is it something that you should do? I can't answer that.
Okay, so look at, I'll send you some links, look at them later, and we'll connect after this talk, because there might be an opportunity there.
Awesome. I would definitely say just yell at us on Mastodon. There are plenty of people at Microsoft that when they see the words AI, they chomp at the bit. And they're probably more capable of answering this question than I am.
Okay.
I really like the idea of using it for to improve your accessibility and just giving you like recommendations, optional, like approve, disapprove. Like that's a good image description. Sounds great.
Yeah,
and you could build that into your pipeline.
Yeah,
I think it's well.
Awesome.
Anyone else got any questions? Anyone ever used Playwright before?
I haven't. It sounds very impressive. I wish that I had that back when I was doing automated testing on mainframes in the 90s. And I actually wrote code to go to a database, DB2 and whatnot, and grab values and then ram them in various places. So it would just go up and down, which wasn't a web screen, but it was a dumb terminal, but it was still input, and broke a lot of code, made a lot of people upset, but the boss was happy.
I won't say that I've heard of people using Playwright to automate some of their tasks in Django admin, but I won't say that I haven't heard of people doing that. So yeah, if you got a lot of like CRUD based entries, you can absolutely use tools like Playwright for that. Just again, I got into Python because I used a different software to automate myself out of a job by taking over web browsers that I like my web browser and basically doing a bunch of repetitive tasks. Had Playwright existed, it would have saved me a lot of time.
Yes, and I got into web scraping, we'll call it, and like I needed to find something that can take all the data off these web pages. And I was started with Selenium though, but I've grown.
I love Python's image processing software.
Oh yeah, we were talking to someone who does a lot of that recently.
Yeah, I started to look at that actually a few years back. I joke with people and trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. So, just turned 65. I got a lot of energy, so I'm in this new area, mainly because, as I mentioned before, I'm in Thomas Edison, which in data science, which is mostly statistical based. And at the same time, I started coding in SAS. And recently, SAS is being bought out by IBM, and Microsoft kind of is now encouraging, as best word I could say, Python, and then Python is hooked up with R, which is both open source, which is a contender of SAS. SAS has a lot of hooks into the government. So I see the classic IBM against Microsoft. And I think that's why I think that the Python is going to really be a substantial player for a number of years. I don't know if Jay has any comments on that.
For the sake of my job, no, I do not.
I figured that's
Well, let's give Jay a round of applause. I definitely took some notes.
Absolutely, I did too.
Code gen that I'm definitely going to share with the other team. That and the axe. We don't really do public websites. So we don't have to worry as much about the accessibility, but I bet you it'd be nice. It'd be a nice thing to throw in there.
Accessibility helps everyone, even the folks internally. And there's studies on that too, of like, if you ever have to argue accessibility with someone, just let them know that accessible sites help people who don't require accessible sites. It makes their experiences better as well. So definitely something to keep in mind.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much.